The Forgotten Train. The small town of Black Hollow was a place shrouded in mystery, nestled between dense forests and jagged cliffs. Once a bustling hub during the height of the railway era, it had fallen into obscurity as the tracks were abandoned and nature reclaimed the land. Its narrow cobblestone streets and old-fashioned gas lamps gave it an eerie charm, especially at night when the mist rolled in from the surrounding woods. Locals spoke of strange happenings, the inexplicable disappearance of travelers, the whispers of unseen figures in the forests, and the chilling cold that seemed to linger even in summer. Generations of townsfolk had grown up with tales of the supernatural, but none more haunting than the legend of the old Iron Phantom. For decades, it had been known as a sleepy, uneventful settlement. But there was one thing that made Black Hollow infamous: the legend of the old Iron Phantom. The story went that, 100 years ago, a freight train carrying precious cargo vanished without a trace on its journey through Black Hollow. The cargo was rumored to include priceless artifacts, a golden idol from a distant temple, a set of intricately carved ivory statues, and a mysterious chest that no one was permitted to open. Whispers spoke of a curse tied to the chest, said to bring doom to anyone who touched it. Whatever the truth, the train, its passengers, and the enigmatic cargo were never seen again. The passengers and crew were never found, and the rails remained cold and silent. Yet on moonless nights, at exactly 2:13 a.m., the mournful whistle of the train echoed through the town, sending shivers down the spines of anyone awake to hear it. It wasn't just a sound. Sometimes people reported seeing faint lights dancing on the abandoned tracks. Others swore they heard the rattling of chains, cries of anguish, or the screeching brakes of an invisible locomotive. And those who dared to investigate, well, they were never seen again. Chapter 1. The first warning for Ava Harrington. The stories were nothing more than folklore. A fresh graduate and aspiring journalist, she had come to Black Hollow to uncover the truth. She was drawn to unsolved mysteries and had heard whispers of the old Iron Phantom in an online forum. Determined to make her name with a groundbreaking story, Ava rented a small cabin near the edge of town. Her first few days were uneventful, spent interviewing the locals. Most were tight-lipped, brushing off the legend as nonsense. But a few, like old Martha Cobb, spoke with grave seriousness. "You're better off leaving it alone," Martha warned, her weathered hands trembling as she stirred her tea. "That train's not just a ghost, it's a harbinger. Those who hear its whistle too many times." She trailed off, her eyes darting to the window as though she feared being overheard. "What happens to them?" Ava pressed, her pen poised over her notepad. "They disappear," Martha whispered, her voice barely audible. "Like smoke in the wind." Chapter 2. The Whistle Calls. On the 5th night of her stay, Ava was awakened by a sound that made her blood run cold, a piercing whistle, long and mournful. Her heart thudded in her chest as she sat upright, the room steeped in an unnatural silence broken only by the haunting sound. The air felt heavy, suffused with an icy chill that made her breath visible. She strained to listen, her palms clammy and trembling, as the whistle echoed again, this time accompanied by a faint, rhythmic clatter. Ava's mind raced, every shadow in the room seeming to shift and stretch toward her. The feeling of being watched was overwhelming, as if unseen eyes were lurking just beyond the thin veil of darkness. She bolted upright in bed, her heart pounding. Glancing at her clock, she saw the time, 2:13 a.m. She tried to rationalize it. Perhaps it was just a prankster or an echo carried by the wind. But then she heard it again, closer this time. The faint clatter of wheels on tracks reached her ears, though she knew there hadn't been a functional railway in Black Hollow for decades. Grabbing her flashlight and recorder, Ava ventured outside. The air was icy, and a thick fog clung to the ground. She followed the sound, her boots crunching on the gravel path that led to the old, overgrown tracks. As she approached, the whistle sounded once more, almost deafening. The fog thickened, and for a brief moment Ava saw it. A massive, rust-covered locomotive, its windows glowing with an eerie green light. Shadows moved inside, their forms twisted and unnatural. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, the train vanished, leaving Ava gasping for breath. Chapter 3. Uncovering the Past. Determined to understand what she had seen, Ava dove into the town's archives. The dusty records room was filled with ancient ledgers and yellowed papers. She unearthed newspaper clippings detailing Freight 917's final departure, but one headline caught her eye: "Mysterious passenger seen boarding lost train." Further digging revealed witness accounts describing a cloaked figure carrying an ornate chest marked with cryptic symbols. Among the documents, Ava found a journal written by the train's conductor. Its final entry hastily scrawled, "The artifact hums with an unnatural energy. I fear it will doom us all." She unearthed records of the train, Freight 917, and its ill-fated journey. The cargo manifest listed mundane items, but Ava found inconsistencies. There were rumors of a secret compartment carrying a dangerous artifact, a cursed relic stolen from a forbidden temple. The more she uncovered, the more sinister the story became. Witnesses from that time spoke of strange occurrences leading up to the train's disappearance: animals behaving erratically, people going mad, and a strange figure seen boarding the train before its final departure. Ava's investigation caught the attention of Tom, a young mechanic who had lived in Black Hollow his entire life. He claimed to know where the train's remains could be found. "There's an old tunnel deep in the woods," Tom said, his voice low. "They sealed it off years ago, but my grandpa told me it's where the train went off the rails. No one dares to go there anymore." Chapter 4. The Tunnel of Shadows. Armed with a map and a stubborn resolve, Ava and Tom set out for the tunnel. The journey was treacherous, the forest growing darker and more oppressive with every step. When they finally reached the sealed entrance, Ava felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Using a crowbar, Tom pried open the rusted metal barrier. A rush of cold air escaped, carrying with it the scent of decay. Inside, the tunnel was pitch black, the walls slick with moisture. Ava's flashlight barely cut through the gloom. As they ventured deeper, they began to hear it: the distant clatter of wheels, the hiss of steam, and faint, ghostly whispers. The air grew heavy, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. Then they saw it. The old iron phantom sat derailed in the tunnel, its massive bulk looming in the darkness. The green glow emanated from its windows, and the shadows inside were clearer now. They weren't passengers. They were souls, their faces twisted in eternal torment. Ava's recorder captured their cries. "Help us! Free us!" Tom stumbled backward, his flashlight shaking. "We need to leave. Now." But Ava was drawn to the engine. There, in the conductor's seat, sat a figure cloaked in darkness. Its hollow eyes locked onto her, and a voice echoed in her mind. "You shouldn't have come." Chapter 5. The Curse. Unleashed. The tunnel began to shake violently, and the train's whistle screamed, louder and more piercing than ever, as if the sound itself could shatter reality. The shadows surged forth like a living tide, their forms writhing and shifting, some with grotesque faces frozen in silent screams, others extending claw-like tendrils toward Ava and Tom. The walls of the tunnel seemed to close in, pulsating with an unnatural rhythm as the air grew colder than ice. Ava stumbled, her breath ragged, but Tom grabbed her arm, pulling her forward. "Don't look back," he shouted, though his voice was nearly drowned out by the cacophony of wails and grinding metal. The ground beneath them cracked, and Ava's flashlight flickered. For a brief, horrifying moment, she caught a glimpse of the conductor's hollow eyes glowing like embers in the darkness, his skeletal hand reaching toward her. The train itself roared, its wheels sparking against the tracks as it surged forward, impossibly fast, its green-lit windows flashing scenes of torment and despair. Ava could feel the cold, clammy grasp of the shadows brushing against her skin as they raced for the entrance. The sound of the whistle reached a crescendo, and just as the tunnel seemed ready to collapse entirely, they burst into the open air, falling to the ground in a heap. Behind them, the train barreled forward, but before it could reach the entrance, it vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the echoes of its haunting whistle and the oppressive silence of the forest. The shadows poured out of the train, reaching for Ava and Tom. They ran, the darkness nipping at their heels. Just as they reached the entrance, the train roared to life, its wheels sparking against the rusted tracks. It barreled toward them, but as they leapt out of the tunnel, the train vanished, leaving behind only silence. Ava's recorder was the only proof of what they'd experienced. When she played it back, the cries of the souls and the sinister whistle were unmistakable. But the final words chilled her to the bone. "You can't outrun the phantom." From that night on, Ava was plagued by the whistle, always at 2:13 a.m. No matter where she went, the old iron phantom followed, its curse forever bound to her. The end